Hi guys, so just a little update. I thought I'd spoken about this book, but it turns out I haven't. And that is for Trixie Mattel, who is the drag queen that I've picked. And her prompt is multifaceted queen, an author who has a lot of books out. And for that, I picked Sweet Little Lies by Jill Shalvis. This is the first in her Heartbreaker Bay novels, and I picked this up because I wanted something sort of light, sweet, easy to read, and I wasn't disappointed. And it also reminded me that over Christmas I watched a Passion Flicks film, I think it was Passion Flicks film, called The Trouble with Mistletoe, and as I started reading this book, as with all Jill Shalvis's books, they tend to be set in these sort of small towns, and there's quite distinctive features to them. And in this particular one, there's this wishing well that people wish on, and there's this local sort of homeless man who makes sort of an appearance quite regularly, and he's quite a comical character. And they all have a lot of sort of interactions with him, and he sort of knows what's going on because he's always around. And it just rang a bell with me, and it turns out that The Trouble with Mistletoe is the next book in the series. So I'd already been introduced somewhat to these characters through Willa, who is the main character in the second one. But this one is about Prue and Finn. Finn owns a pub, and Prue works on these sort of tourist ships. She's a skipper on a ship, or captain of a ship, and does tours around, I think it's San Francisco Bay Harbour. And there's obviously this attraction between her and Finn. She goes to his pub regularly to meet up with the locals, to have dinner. There's obviously this attraction between the two of them. And yet there's obviously something that has gone on with Prue's background, and I don't want to spoil it, but there's been something that's happened, and she has this sort of need to appease for something that's happened by helping various people who were affected by this thing. And so she spent her whole life trying to help them, and so that slowly unravels, and we see where Finn lies in that. And there's obviously this sort of holding back of sharing the full truth with him, but then falling into this kind of romance, and you're sort of seeing this tug of war of sort of opening up and telling the truth and allowing yourself to share some of your secrets with someone, and learning sort of how to trust. And also then you start to see the relationships between the women that are obviously going to be the central characters throughout this series. So I did really enjoy this. I love Jill Shalvis's writing. It's really easy to get into, and so I ended up giving this one 4 stars. Okay, so for category is, I picked Pretty in Pink, a book with pink on the cover. And so in the end I went for this one. It's got some pink on the cover, and I just was really feeling like I wanted to read it. It's called Sweet Bean Paste by Durian Sukigawa. Hold on 2 seconds. Somebody is trying to get some attention. So this is a translated book from Japanese. This really is a story about sort of friendship. It's set in modern day contemporary Japan, and it follows our main character, Sentaro, who is an ex-convict who is now working in what they called dorayaki, which is like a paste, like a pancakey wrapped around a sweet bean paste confection. And he works in this shop, and he's sort of paying off some debt to somebody who helped him out when he came out of prison. He doesn't really have any connection to his family anymore. He doesn't see them. And he lives quite a solitary life. You can tell from the story he tends to just drink in the evenings, and he's just going through the mill of making these dorayaki sweet bean sort of confections. He buys the paste that goes in the middle sort of wholesale in big batches, and you know, they get a slow steady stream of regulars, but nothing mind-blowing. And then one day a lady turns up at the shop and is asking for a job. He's been advertising for some help. She is very, very old and wants to work for him. Her name's Toku, and he's hesitant at first, but then eventually allows her to join him. And she is incredibly talented at creating sweet bean paste from scratch, and starts to teach him how to do that. And it's just a beautiful friendship friendship that develops between the two. We learn a lot about Japan's history with a particular illness, and we learn about you know, prejudice, and we learn about sort of, there's lots of food references, and it's quite sensual, and sort of listening to the food that you're using, and really sort of appreciating what it's giving you in terms of nourishment and sustenance. And it's just beautiful prose. I really loved it. And there is also one other character we have in here who's a young schoolgirl, who I think her name was Wakana, and she is also sort of part of this friendship. So we have three very unlikely friends, and it's the relationship that blossoms between them, and sort of how it changes their lives really. And I just thought it was lovely, actually. I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. As with a lot of sort of Japanese fiction, especially contemporary fiction, I find the endings tend to be a little bit abrupt. I don't feel like we get that sort of that ending that I really like, and I think that's because they leave it for you to sort of imagine, because, you know, the future is continuing. But I would rather have, I think for me, more of a wrapped up style of ending, where we know where everyone is now, where we don't have to sort of think, oh well, I bet they did that, or you know, maybe they went and did this. So that's why it didn't get 5 stars, but I truly loved it. It was a beautiful book. It fit in with the category of pretty in pink, and so I will definitely be rooting out some more Japanese fiction. Okay, so I've just finished the challenge card, and it was Cheer Battle, a book set in a school or college. And so for that, I decided to read Get Schooled by Christina Jones. I picked this up at the recommendation of quite a few people for a book with a black protagonist, main character, and a black author, and that made me instantly want to give it a go. But also the story just sounded right up my street. It's in the romance genre, which is something that I've really been enjoying, so I thought I would give it a go. And this is about Reese and Jason, and it's told in multiple points of view. And Reese is a graduate student, and she is working for her mum, who is a professor. She's a graduate student marking papers, helping her mum do grading, and doing that sort of initial assessment of other students in the class. And she's also trying to I think get her PhD maybe, or her master's. And so we have her, she is in this sort of dead-end relationship with this lawyer who she doesn't really spend much time with, and just sort of doesn't really have much in common with or much chemistry, but just sort of is just letting it go on because there's nothing else around. And then we have Jason, who is a student in this program, but he's not like most of the students. He's much older, he's been in the army, and he's come into this later in order to get the qualification he needs to sort of pursue the career he wants. And there is a sort of a chance encounter at the beginning. It's kind of a hate to love romance, and it's about their relationship forming, and there's a lot of chemistry in here, and I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed how the relationships formed. I really enjoyed getting to know these two characters and their backgrounds and their strong family influences. I really enjoyed those moments where Reese was with her friends, and her best friend Devon especially, and you know, they get chicken wings together and they're just sitting and having girl talk, which is very relatable. It's one of those things that I used to love the best when I was dating, where you'd come home and you'd share it with the person you were living with, or one of your friends, and you'd sort of sit and discuss it and just make fun of each other, and I just really enjoyed that aspect of it. So this is book 1 in the Wright brothers series, and you get to know in small part the sort of other brothers, Jason's other brothers, so that you can you know, you get a little bit of an inkling of what their books will be like. It's definitely one that I'd like to continue with at some point, and I'm looking forward to finding out a bit more about the other brothers. One's a doctor, one is a author who is a single dad, so I think they'll be really interesting as well. So I gave this one 4 stars. The next one that I wanted to talk about is called Marriage for One by Ella Mays, and this was for the category, which there it is, stuck inside still. This was for my judge, who was RuPaul, whose prompt is "Don't fuck it up," by an author you love. Now, Ella Mays wrote 2 books that I gave 5 stars last year, and would definitely, if I'd done a top books of 2020, those books would have hit that list. So I wanted to read this. I thought it was probably going to be a 5 stars. I had it on my shelf. She is an author that I love, and oh, I didn't love this. I ended up giving it 3 stars, and it's about it's dual perspective. It's about Jack, and it's about, oh, see, look, it's that bad I can't even remember her name. This is about Jack and Rose, and Jack and Rose at the very beginning of this book, so it's not a spoiler, have ended up getting married, but they don't really know each other, and it's for a particular reason. We find out that it's because Rose has been lived her whole life, mainly her whole life, with her uncle and his family. Her uncle's died, and she had an agreement with her uncle that she would be allowed to run this coffee shop she'd been saving up for in one of his buildings for 2 years before she would have to move on, so she could get a start, because she couldn't afford the rent of anybody anywhere else. And then her uncle's died, and there's a stipulation in his will that if something happened to him, the property would be owned by her husband. This is where it all went a bit weird, because, you know, she was engaged, yeah, and he liked the guy, but I didn't really get why he would leave it to the husband and not to her, and it just seemed very archaic and misogynistic. And then obviously the only way round this was Jack has swooped in as this lawyer and has married her so that she could have that, and he would then own the property. But it didn't feel quite right. It didn't quite make sense, and his motivations at the end, I didn't really understand why Jack did what he did, which I don't want to spoil in case you decide to read it. And I just didn't really believe their relationship. I didn't enjoy any of the sort of steamy elements to it. I just thought it was a bit of a dud for me, really. It was okay. I read it quite quickly. It wasn't terrible. I liked the descriptions of the cafe, but it just missed the mark a little bit for me. So that was a 3 stars, which means that poor old Trixie Mattel has only got 15 stars so far, because I've had 3 4-star books, which is 12, and then a 3-star book, so that's 15. So I need to read a lip sync. Okay, so I had the task of reading a book with a strong female main character. I had to lip sync. I wanted to pick one that had a strong female main character. I tried 3 or 4 different books, and none of them were really sticking. I was feeling a bit slumpy. I didn't want to get in the slump, so I just picked up a random one from my shelf that I thought would fit the bill, and that was Lois Lane Fallout by Gwenda Bond. I knew that our main character in this would be a strong female because it's about Lois Lane, and if you know anything about Superman, then you'll know that Lois Lane is a tenacious reporter for the Daily Planet. She's headstrong, smart, determined, and asks questions and gets herself into all sorts of scrapes being strong, and yeah, she is the love interest of Superman. And what I really liked about this, it's a YA story, and it's sort of looking at Lois's beginnings and sort of taking a new spin on it. So at the start of this, Lois has started a new school in Metropolis. Her family has just moved to Metropolis. She started a new school, and she has, on her first day, become embroiled in something that's obviously going on. She's questioning something. She sees what she thinks is bullying. She sees this group of students that are almost working together in some sort of hive mindset. She doesn't really know what's going on, but she knows that something strange is afoot. She captures the attention of a guest speaker at school, Mr. Perry, who is who's the editor for the Daily Planet, who then invites her to join his group of students who are starting up a sort of junior reporting website for the Daily Planet. And so starts this sort of connection with friends and questioning what's going on, and her sort of foray into newspaper journalism, but also we learn a little bit about her dad, the general. And she has a communication with someone who is obviously very important to her on a chat room, and his name is Smallville Guy, and she doesn't know much about him. They've only ever communicated via online chat forum privately, but it sort of came about, they found each other when she posted on a website for people that see strange things, and when she was driving through Kansas with her family, her and her father saw something strange. They thought it might have been someone flying, and she posted about this on this forum, and all of a sudden Smallville Guy forms a friendship with her. So, you know, we know what's going on, but obviously she doesn't. He's quite cagey about himself. He's a bit of a mystery. He can't tell her who he is or tell her about himself too much. And although she wants to know, she wants his relationship much more. And so he's sort of involved in it slightly. This has got kind of a online electronic computerized spin, which I think is really modern and obviously will suit sort of the generation of today. I sound so old, but people who are spending much more time online. We all are, and this is sort of looking into some of the downfalls and pitfalls of where perhaps when things are militarized, or when the wrong people take technology into, you know, the wrong direction. So anyway, I wasn't expecting to like this as much as I did. I did really enjoy it, and I gave it 4 stars, which means that Trixie Mattel has now gone from 15 to 19, which means Trixie, Shantae, you stay. And she will go in my stay envelope, and when we've finished going through the initial queens, I will go back through that envelope and decide how I'm going to whittle them down to the next. Perhaps I'll have an all-stars round, I don't know. But for now, Trixie Mattel, Shantae stays, and I will be picking out my next queen and all the various different categories soon, and I'll come back to you with another episode soon. So I hope you're enjoying this. I hope you're all watching season 13 and season 2 of the UK drag race that's on at the moment. I'm certainly enjoying both, and I look forward to speaking to you soon. Bye for now, BookTube.